Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would personally review this little video and this topic that I found very particularly interesting. And this is going to be an interview that I recently seen with that of FightHype.com, which, of course, for those of you that don't know, I believe is its own YouTube channel. I believe its own boxing news website. At least I believe. I've never personally been on their website if they have one, but I have seen their videos. Anyway, very decent boxing news channel. But for those of you, of course, that have not heard the recent news, Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez, he did have a recent interview to where he said pretty much the plans that I had assumed for Canelo Alvarez all along within these past several months, which is that after the John Ryder fight, after that mandatory defense, that more than likely he is going to get in the ring with that of Dimitri Bivol in a 175 pounds rematch at the light heavyweight division. And I've been saying this for months, in my view, that Canelo was always going to get in the rematch with Dimitri Bivol. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe Canelo Alvarez will change his mind. Maybe he'll fight someone else. Nothing is set in stone yet. But more than likely, with Canelo Alvarez, with what he recently stated, that is the fight that he is interested in. And I did a video yesterday with that of the David Benavidez situation. And I've talked a lot about Canelo Alvarez in the past, and I've especially reviewed certain channels like that of Dante's Boxing Nation or Boxing Ego, or Aki TV or some of these other channels. And I get some of the guys, or some people that come in my comment section and they say, well, why do you review these videos? All you're doing is just commentating and, do your own perspective, do your own commentation, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you actually take the time to watch my videos, you know that all my videos are pretty much my own reactions and my own commentary. And I break things down very incrementally. I break things down, to detail, at least over certain things that I think. But once again, this is a lot of the times a reactionary channel. I like to react and debate certain things. And a big part of the reason why I like to react to certain videos, especially by those channels, is because I think that sometimes they can maybe bring up good points while also mixing a lot of bullshit. It just is what it is. And that's why I really wanted to do it. Because they're not the only channels that, I like to review. I also like to review ESPN First Take when I think it's necessary, or some of the ones. Basically, the main point of this channel is to break down sports as logically and objectively as I can, to make great debates, make great comparisons. And when I see a narrative that, in my opinion, that I don't think fits, in the right way, I'm going to commentate on it. And a lot of the times, it's no offense against any of these channels, and I get some people that say, oh, well, you're just hating on these channels and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not really about love or hate. I don't really carry any love or hate for any of these other channels. It's not really about that. Don't get me wrong. Do I disagree with a lot of things that they say? Yes, but I don't carry any hate for anybody out there specifically. The only thing that I do, and the main objective and the main goal at the end of the day, is to talk about certain narratives or talk about certain debates that I either see that I think can add to the conversation, that I either may agree with or that I disagree with, and that I like to analyze even deeper. And it's no offense against a certain amount of these channels like Dante's Boxing Nation and Boxing Ego. I don't think that they're necessarily, bad, and obviously they have a great talent for what they do in terms of attracting an audience. But once again, I also think that a certain amount of the commentary that they put out there, that it can be very biased, racially motivated. And when you have that combination of emotionally motivated, racially motivated, and you clearly have that level of bias, your analyzations cannot be trusted. And a big part of the reasons why I like to review their videos, and certain people may not understand this, is because obviously with their following, they're not the only ones that hold those same opinions. There are thousands and thousands of people, or boxing fans, or people who maybe would call themselves, boxing, experts or something like that, and they may have the same opinions. So when I really review a video by that of Dante's Boxing Nation or one of these other channels, it's not really even just it's not really to tear them down or anything like that. It's not really even just to respond just to mainly what they're saying. It's to really respond to thousands and thousands and thousands of other people who may potentially think the same thing, or may take a look at their video and say, you know what, that's a very good point. I agree with you there. And I have to overall, at least in my view, point out certain things that I agree with and disagree with, and why, in my opinion, this point fits and why maybe this point would not fit. But anyways, one of the fighters that they've been trying to tear down for a very long time now, Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez, the fighter that they've been having a hard on now for the better part of the last 10 years. Canelo Alvarez, once again, has recently stated that he has a goal in mind, which is to more than likely face Dimitri Bivol in that 175-pound rematch. And these channels and a lot of these other people, these LDBC new media guys, they've been trying to promote this bullshit about Canelo. Oh, he don't want that smoke. He's going to keep facing these weak-ass British fighters and all sort of stuff. All Canelo Alvarez was doing, once again, is trying to get back in his groove and biding time to refresh as a fighter, which is what you're supposed to do sometimes after taking a loss. And that's exactly what Canelo Alvarez did, in my opinion. That was a great thing to do. Now, he also is going to have to be very honest with himself in that Dimitri Bivol rematch. Canelo, I believe, in a recent interview stated that he believes he actually won the fight. No, Canelo, and I like Canelo as a fighter, but no, he didn't win that fight. Really, not even close. I think that Canelo put up a good performance in, the first 4 rounds. And then after that, he completely lost steam, and he had nothing for him after that. He had no game plan. He had no type of style of attack after that. It just is what it is. And this Dimitri Bivol rematch, it is going to be very particularly interesting because I think it's possibly winnable for Canelo Alvarez, but it's going to be a very uphill battle. It's going to be a very uphill battle. It's going to be very particularly interesting to see who ends up winning that fight. But Canelo Alvarez has recently stated that it's also possible that a David Benavidez fight could happen, or at least he's put some particular interest in it. And I think that he sees now that David Benavidez has beaten Caleb Plant, that whether he likes to or not, he's going to have to get in the ring with David Benavidez. But I think that Canelo Alvarez, I do think that he thoroughly enjoys the challenge. And this is another reason why I wanted to commentate on this. Because, once again, another reason why I like to review, especially a certain amount of those guys' videos from the LDBC and new media about Canelo Alvarez, is because I always like to promote this bullshit, kind of like what the Floyd Mayweather Jr. haters did when he was at his peak. They always love to do this shit, and this is what I like to call the Floyd Mayweather Jr. treatment, or probably a better name for it is the #1 pound-per-pound treatment. Whenever you're looked at as the best of your sport, or whenever you're looked at as the #1 pound-per-pound fighter, or the #1 pound-per-pound athlete of your particular sport, or whatever it may be, there's really never enough you can do in order to earn the respect of certain people in certain circles. That's just how it's always going to be. And that's why it's also very important, not just for Canelo Alvarez, but for a lot of people really in general, to really not give a shit what the majority of people think, because most people are really going to be looking to tear you down anyway. Because most people don't really want to see you that successful in the first place. They'd rather you stay a loser, like what they believe they are. But anyways, when it comes down to it, like I said, Canelo Alvarez, because some of the times, I get some of these guys in my comment section, especially whenever I commentate on a video, and they're like, oh, you're just mad because Dante's telling the truth and all this other bullshit, Listen, is there certain truths about what Dante says about certain fighters, about complexion for their protection, and, there being overall certain great white hypes, or there being certain, fighters promoted on the, quote-unquote old media hype train on ESPN, over that of black fighters? Sure, all that is to a degree true. But when you're promoting certain narratives about certain fighters that you just don't like because you don't like their demographic, like that of Canelo Alvarez or Tyson Fury or Vasily Lomachenko or Alexander Usyk, and you just want to claim that those guys, that they're just propaganda machines and that they have no substance and that they're all smoke and mirrors. No, sir, I'm sorry, I can't agree with that. And I have a certain amount of people sometimes that come in my comment section and they're like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just another Canelita lover. I had this one dude that called me that a couple of times now. And he's like, you're just another Canelo Alvarez lover. He's just a guy that's an average Mexican fighter. And he was just promoted to the top because of his complexion. And if he actually got in the ring with those guys, he would lose all those big fights. Like, it's no offense, dude, but you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. And I seen the same thing with the Floyd Mayweather Jr. haters 10 years ago. I see the same thing with Canelo Alvarez now. It's just in reverse. They're different demographics. So it just is what it is, at least mainly. The point is this. Canelo Alvarez, you cannot have the amount of names that you have on your resume like a Canelo Alvarez and just be some bum destroyer. That's not how it works. Because when you take a look at actual bum destroyers, or certain fighters that are moving in and outside of the weight classes and not fighting any great particular names, they have a resume like that of a Mikey Garcia, or an Adrian Broner, or a Gervonta Tank Davis. Not saying that Adrian Broner necessarily avoided anybody, but he doesn't have the greatest of resumes either, in my opinion. Like, when you take a look at Mikey Garcia has about over 40 fights, I believe, on his record. Who has he ever really beat? Who are the top 5 wins in his career? Adrian Broner, who has proven never to be an A-grade fighter. Orlando Salido, who in my opinion never was really an A-grade fighter, at least not 100%. And then who else really after that? Sergey Lipinets, Zlatan Satsichning or whatever the hell that dude's name was. Like, who the hell are really the top 5 wins in Mikey Garcia's career? He hasn't really beat anybody. Like, he could have easily fought Lomachenko or Devin Haney or some of these other guys. He decided not to fight any of those guys, man. He could have fought Josh Taylor, Teofimo Lopez. He could have came back and fought any of those guys. He decided not to. I was right on the money always with Mikey Garcia. Gervonta Tank Davis, and I give him credit for fighting Ryan Garcia. But when you take a look at a certain amount of names on his resume, who the hell does he really have? You have Hector Garcia, Rolly Romero, Mario Barrios, Isaac Pitbull Cruz. Like, dude, none of those guys are A-grade fighters. And I have some guys saying, oh, what are you talking about? He's like he's the Mexican Mike Tyson. Like, get the fuck out of here with that shit. And no offense against Gervonta Tank Davis. Greatly talented fighter. But Ryan Garcia is really so far going to be the toughest test in his career. And if Ryan Garcia is going to be clearly the toughest test in his career, what does that really say about your damn resume? Because Ryan Garcia has never even won a belt before. It just is what it is. But anyways, when you take a look at Canelo, once again, you can't compare him to those type of fighters. Because Canelo has guys like Austin Trout when he was undefeated. He had Miguel Cotto when he was looked at to be revived in his career. Sergey Kovalev when he was coming off of the victories over Eleider Alvarez and Anthony Yard. Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, Caleb Plant, Danny Jacobs, Adeslani Lara, Gennady Triple G Golovkin. And even if you want to add some of the lower tier ones like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. or Amir Khan, Canelo Alvarez has damn near a dozen A-grade names on his resume. Certainly at least about 8 or 9. And that's why Canelo Alvarez, before his loss to Dimitri Bivol, was my undisputed #1 pound-for-pound fighter. And once again, I get some of these guys on here. I've seen the same exact treatment of Floyd Mayweather Jr. They were like, oh, he's just a fraud. He just ducks and does this, and he only fights people at their worst. Like, no offense, dude, but you really have no idea what the hell you're talking about. It just, it just is what it is. When he fought Danny Jacobs and all those guys that I just mentioned, they were pretty much looked at, if not at the best point in their career, still as an A-grade level fighter. All right, once again, a washed-up fighter, in my opinion, is a fighter that pretty much has no chance of winning a belt at that point in time in their career, or at least does not have that great of a chance to win it. Even Onito Donaire, and out of the Naoya Inoue rematches, those matches, I wouldn't say that he was completely washed up, but I would say that he clearly was not the same fighter. Sergey Kovalev, for example, in my view, was an A- level fighter when he fought Canelo. And the fact that there was that size differential, you have to give Canelo Alvarez a great amount of credit for that victory. But anyways, once again, Canelo has stated that more than likely he is going to get in the ring with Dimitri Bivol. Let's see what he has to say.
When we keep asking about Benavidez, do you feel it all like, no mama's way? Like, what do you, yeah.
No.
Or you like it?
He's a good fighter. But like I say to him, everybody say the same thing before I fought with Golovkin. Oh, he's a monster. He's gonna knock out Canelo. He's this and that. At the end of the day, it's not the same. Be in the ring with other fighters like be in the ring with me. It's different.
I agree. It is going to be different, and that's another reason for this video is to really compare that with Gennady Golovkin and that of David Benavidez. If you're asking me personally, even though I don't know if many people have really asked this question, do I think that the David Benavidez fight is going to be tougher than that of the Gennady Golovkin fight? Not if the best version of Canelo Alvarez shows up. Now, if I believe that Canelo Alvarez is going to have the same stamina issues that I seen in the Dimitri Bivol first fight or in the Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight, then I might have to favor David Benavidez just because of sheer stamina. But if Canelo Alvarez comes there in full form like what I seen in the Gennady Golovkin rematch, or in that of the Danny Jacobs fight, or some of the other fights that I've seen him in, like that of the Caleb Plant fight, I more than likely would have to favor Canelo Alvarez. Once again, David Benavidez, and I did a video on him yesterday, where it was a video about, David Benavidez allegedly has no technique. I don't think that he doesn't necessarily have technique, but I would label him as a bully fighter. And once again, a lot of the times these bully fighters, once they finally get in the ring with someone that can finally handle them and handle that type of style, and they're just not going to sit back and be intimidated, a lot of the times the bullies, once they start getting bullied back, or once that fighter is able to hurt them or kind of nullify their game plan, they're like, oh shit, what the hell do I do? What the hell is going on here? I've never had to deal with this, blockade before. Because a lot of the times they have one game plan, and once that game plan is out there, and once that game plan is thrown out the window, they don't really have anything else. I've seen it time and time again. I've seen it with George Foreman, Deontay Wilder. I've seen it with Antonio Margarito once he finally got caught with those damn hand wraps. You know, I've seen it with Jarrett Hurd. I've seen it with a multitude of those fighters. Once again, if you watched my video as of yesterday, you knew that I compared it to that actually of a Star Wars character. Once again, for those of you that watched Star Wars growing up, I grew up in the 2000s and the 2010s. I was born in 1998. So Star Wars was a big part of my life. That was when they started coming out with the Clone Wars series. General Grievous was one of the more notorious villains of that series. Well, if you watched one of the cartoon, series earlier on, Grievous was known as a guy that was actually known as a Jedi killer. But he could only kill the lower tier Jedis. He was only a guy that could kill the Jedis that were very good. He couldn't kill the guys that were great. And that's the same thing that I usually see out of bully fighters. They might be able to beat the 90% of guys. Kind of like how General Grievous in the Star Wars world, he's able to beat the Jedis that are a little bit more inexperienced, and they still might be talented. But he can't beat the best of the best. He can't beat Obi-Wan. He can't beat Anakin Skywalker. He can't beat Mace Windu. He can't beat Kit Fisto. He can't beat any of those guys. Because those guys are the elite of the elite. And Count Dooku always used to tell him, if you don't have intimidation, if you don't have fear, if you don't have surprise on your side, it's best to retreat. And the reason why he told him that is because he knew Grievous's limitations. And a lot of the times, once again, it's very similar with that of the pressure fighter. Because when you talk about some of those fighters, like that of a David Benavidez, when you talk about Antonio Margarito, Deontay Wilder, when they finally get pushed back for the first time and they realize that that game plan of just knocking out that guy or completely pushing him around, that it ain't going to work, a lot of the times they mentally fold under the pressure or they back up. And you cannot back up. You can't escape in that of a boxing fight. You're in a ring. You have to fight. And if you can't fight going backward, it's just as bad as if you can't fight going forward. So at the end of the day, once again, we'll see how truly great David Benavidez is. What I'll say is this: he certainly is one of the more talented bully fighters that I've ever seen. I think that he does have decent technique in certain areas, but there is certain things that he does need to sharpen up on. His feet are still a little bit clunky. Sometimes his head movement, in my opinion, does need to get a little bit better. He also was very nervous against that of Caleb Plant. He didn't land as much, in my opinion, as what he did in other fights. Of course, that is expected. And could it be different with Canelo, who's smaller, and a guy that doesn't use his feet quite as much as Caleb Plant? It could be. But once again, Canelo Alvarez has a type of talent and a skill set that really could push back David Benavidez, because with those type of fighters, you really need to stand your ground and show your level of power. And also show that you're not just going to sit here and bully me around like some of these other fighters, some of these other guys that you've just been treating like, knockoffs. I'm not that kind of dude. Evander Holyfield did it with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson tried to bully around Evander Holyfield. He tried to get inside with those shots. Evander Holyfield said, "Nah, I'm not going to handle that shit. I'm not going to, we're not going to play that game. If you come at me, I'm coming right back at you." And the level of power and the level of tenacity, it really got in Mike Tyson's head, because Mike Tyson, believe it or not, even with his talent, was a bully fighter. And once you got past that, facade, once you got past that intimidation, Mike Tyson, became very flawed. It just is what it is. He got hit a lot more, and he cannot really get off certain strikes. It just is what it is. Same with Antonio Margarito. Now, of course, a big part of the reason why he was so successful prior to the Shane Mosley fight was because of that of his hand wraps. But a big part of the reason why Shane Mosley was also successful was because he was hitting them with, whoppers the whole entire fight. He was hitting them with a right cross, left hook. He was whooping his ass from pillar to post the whole entire fight. And then when you talk about Deontay Wilder against Tyson Fury was sticking that jab in his face. He was getting that left hook in there. He was getting that right cross up beside his head. And that's what Canelo Alvarez is going to have to do against David Benavidez as well, or anyone who fights David Benavidez. And I think Caleb Plant tried his best, but he just doesn't really have enough of offensive skills, in my opinion. At least to a degree. He just doesn't have that type of style to really beat someone like that of a David Benavidez, and he doesn't have the level of power.
Like you're starting to like the challenge, though. Like it's starting to get the fire lit.
I like challenge, but I have a goal this year in my career, right?
So we'll get it next year.
And it's a really hard fight for me, like the people fight. But look, I like that kind of challenge.
And I believe that some of the guys that I've seen that sometimes I like to review, they said it's a really hard fight. Well, Canelo Alvarez just said it's a really hard fight for me, the Bivol fight. And let me tell you this, Mr. Canelo, that David Benavidez fight is a hard fight for you too. because David Benavidez, he's going to be around the same size, if not even a little bit bigger than Dimitri Bivol. The dude is 6'2".
And I've been in the ring a lot of years with a lot of hard fights. I mean, but you can't say, oh, Benavidez is a good fight. It's a good fighter, but I mean, man, I've been in the ring in hard fights with every single good fighter there. So,
Are you coming back to 68 or are you going to stay at 75 after
No,
people
68.
coming back to 68?
Saúl, parte de la última. Entiendo que los estilos hacen peleas, pero no te reivindica mucho cómo pierde el zurdo con Bivol. ¿Cómo
ahí sabíamos, el zurdo Ramírez, nosotros lo respetábamos mucho. De hecho, lo tuvimos en Canelo Promotion en el inicio de su carrera y lo ayudó mucho.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it for the video, because the rest of it, of course, is in Espanol, and I'm not personally a Spanish speaker myself. But then, of course, they brought up Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez. I'm not really sure if that fight would occur or not. I'm not really sure what Zurdo was going to do next. But he got majorly exposed in that last fight against Dimitri Bivol, talking about Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez. And some people may say, well, what are you talking about? Canelo Alvarez somewhat did too. Well, you can say, excuse me, you can maybe say that certain flaws were exposed in that fight, but I also think that Canelo Alvarez's stamina was so horrid in that fight that it's also hard to really see, that not being a factor. As for Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez, the man was in there at about 200 pounds, if not even plus, and he got his ass whooped in that ring completely from pillar to post that whole entire fight. But anyway, that's really about it for today. Once again, it's going to be a very interesting fight to see if Canelo Alvarez does get in the ring with Dimitri Bivol in a rematch. That's going to be a very uphill battle. And the David Benavidez fight, those will be very interesting as well. Personally, the fight that I would actually want to see is Jamal Charlo. And just because I would love to see that fight get out of the way, it's been a fight that I've been personally wanting to watch for a very long time. I don't think it's a 50-50 fight at all. I think that Jamal Charlo, in my view, is a lot more vulnerable than either Dimitri Bivol or David Benavidez. But it's been a fight that a lot of people have been really wanting to see for a while. I think that it would prove some of my assertions correct, that Jamal Charlo is not really the biggest threat to Canelo. But I could be wrong. It is what it is. But anyways, we'll see what happens with this. But Canelo, once again, stated that he has a goal in mind. Let's see what let's see what ends up happening. I believe more than likely that he will beat John Ryder, in hopes of Canelo, in hopes of him being competitive in the Dimitri Bivol rematch. You would hope that he stops John Ryder somewhat early. But we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be very interesting once again to see where Canelo is in form in terms of the next few years of his career. It's going to be very interesting. So we'll see. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.